Hi, today I'm going to show you how to stain and glaze the implant crown. So I've already designed and milled it out of the abutment block and removed the sprue and smoothed it, and now we're going to set it up so we can stain and glaze it. So first you take the Ivoclar Object Fix and you place it inside of the implant crown. I use my finger as a little stop to cover the hole as I squirt it into the implant crown. Then you have to use the implant pin holder and place it inside of the implant crown until you feel it slightly with your finger, like that. And I have a series of brushes to put the object fix where I want it, just to make sure it is smooth against the margin so you don't get glaze on your margin. If you get any on the implant crown itself, you can use the brush or a micro brush and just kind of gently remove any excess material that you got on the implant crown. So it should look like that. Then as far as the shading, I've taken pre-op photos and looked at the teeth to determine the characteristics of the teeth, the shade of the gingival, the shade of the body, if the tooth has any translucency on the cusp tips, so that way you can properly stain and glaze the crown. So first I start with the Ivoclar liquid to wet my brush a little bit. Then I use the Ivoclar glaze. Just kind of mix it around. You want it to be like honey consistency, so that way it's easy to spread on your implant crown but not too runny. You want to have like a 90% glaze, 10% liquid ratio. Then I hold the pin at the bottom and I use the brush and I make strokes on the implant crown upwards. I like this technique better because it allows me to get the glaze right at the margin but not to get it on the margin or cover it. And you just want to make gentle brush strokes from the base of the crown all the way to the top. You want your glaze to be covering the implant crown, but you don't want it too thick, you don't want it too thin. You want it to be just right.
And then if we go 3 months after that, that's going to be in March.
I do the whole body of the crown first, making sure it's even and covering the whole implant crown. And then I go to the occlusal surface of the crown. Sometimes when you're brushing the occlusal surface in the anatomy of the crown, you can get little air bubbles. You want to make sure that it's completely smooth and you get all of the air bubbles out, or it'll make a bubble when you fire it. And you kind of just do a quality check, make sure everything's nice and smooth and covered.
Got it. Need a toothbrush take home? You can just put your
Alright, it looks good. Glaze is nice and smooth and even. Then I switched to a finer tipped brush to do the stain of the crown. So you want to, same thing, gently wet the brush with the liquid part of it. And then Ivoclar has multiple staining. You have a series of A stain, which you can make it as dark as A4. You have translucency, which is blue that you put on the cuss tips, and you have a D stain that can go up to D4. So she is an A shade. I'm using an A3 block, but she's slightly darker at the gingival, so I'm going to stain it at the gingival with the A3 stain. And with this one, you just take a little bit at a time of the stain, and you just gently stroke fine patterns right at the gingival surface where you want the stain to be. And you can go just at the 1/3 gingival, you can go all the way up to half, however your tooth looks when you're staining it. If your tooth, whatever anatomy the tooth has, if you want to make little craze lines, if you want to bring it up just on the mesial and distal, to make your tooth shade look and match as close as possible. So same thing, you want to get the staining on there and make sure you keep it clean from the margin. That looks about right. Now I'm just smoothing it out to make sure it's an even glaze and stain. I want to make sure it's blended well. So that's how it would look. It's hard to see and do sometimes on the purple phase, but when it bakes, it all blends in nicely. So now you are ready for firing. So you place it on the firing tray. And open your oven. It's set to the speed fire, which takes a little less than 15 minutes. Place it in the center of the firing unit and press start. In about 15 minutes, it will come out, the lid will open, and you let it cool for a few minutes, and then we will go over the cementation of the implant crown to the tie base. See you in a few minutes.